Hey guys, so you notice that this isn't a Model 3. Yes, that's right. This is my old 2004 Honda Civic. Today I'm going to be doing a comparison between this car, my old car, and my new car, the Tesla Model 3. So if you're interested, stay tuned. So like I said, I'm going to do a comparison to my old car, the Civic, and the new car, the Model 3. And so the first thing I notice when you step in the car, is let me get the video ready, is you'll notice that this car is old, right? Old and kind of dated. So this car doesn't even have, no Bluetooth, no aux, auxiliary port, none of that. It does have a CD player though, so at least it doesn't have the cassette player, which is super old. It has a CD player. This car is a stick, so yes, I actually drive a stick. For everyone out there, actually, all the millennials watching, how many of you guys know how to drive stick? Let me know in the comments. I want to see how many millennials know how to drive stick. It also has, let's see, nope, too much glare. There we go. Nope, still a lot of glare. It's got an actual speedometer and a tach. So, there we go. Tach, speedometer, and then your other gauges over here, the gas and the water. So, old school car, yes. Also got cloth seats, which I'm not opposed to, like the speedometer and the tach. I'm not opposed to that. It's, just one way to know your speed and what your engine's revving at if you have an engine. I'm not worried about that, but it's just different from Model 3 with a minimalistic design. It has cloth seats, which I'm okay with as well, but it's just not as nice as, the vegan leather seats. There's pros and cons to everything. And also, one thing I do like about this car is the trunk is actually pretty big for a Civic. I do some other side business work, and I can fit a hand truck in the back without having to put my seats down. That's one thing I don't like about the Model 3 is that hand truck I can't fit in the Model 3 without putting the back seat down. So I think it's just a shape thing how they design the back. So it's one nice thing about the Civic that the trunk is pretty big. And I suppose you could call this steering wheel minimalistic. Haha. Obviously because the car is so old, all it has on here is just basically set and resume for your cruise control, and that's basically it. And of course the horn. That still works. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take it for a test drive. Let's see how it compares to the Model 3. So first thing, I got keys. I got to put these keys in and turn the car on to get the car to go anywhere. Obviously that thing you don't have to do with Model 3. Alright, turn the car on. So obviously you turn the car on, engine's loud, it's vibrating, it's making noise, so one of the things you don't need to deal with the Model 3. Alright, let's get going. Alright, so for this particular car, the steering is whatever, I guess. It's alright. I mean, I compare it to my wife's 06 Civic. My dad has an 08 V6 Accord. The steering it's okay. Their steering kind of sucks. It's not Model 3 steering. There's not much feedback. It's kind of stiff, just kind of sloppy. Let's just put it that way. It's just kind of a sloppy steering for a 15-year-old car. Next old thing for this car is I have brakes that I have to use. So there we go. Gotta slow down. Gotta use my brakes. Can't use the regen braking to regen the battery, which kind of sucks. And of course, it's an ICE car. That means it has gas. So it means I'm not being very efficient and polluting the earth because I've got gas and carbon monoxide and just polluting the air. So that's kind of not fun. I think having the car being electric is way better. Not besides that, but it's also cheaper. I'll mention later again, I guess, that for me, I don't even have to pay for energy because lucky me, I get free energy at work. So that's something you can never get with gas. You can't go to a gas station and say, hey, can you give me free gas? That's not going to work. So it's kind of nice that I get free energy. So instead of being cheap, it's super cheap for me because I don't have to pay that even a quarter. It's not a quarter, about a third. So basically, when I did some calculations, energy cost me about a third of what gas would cost me. So if gas costs $3 a gallon, it only cost me $1 for that same amount of energy used. So I get to save even that extra third because I don't have to pay for energy. And of course, with a ICE car, you have engine maintenance and just maintenance in general. This car has 183,000 plus miles on it, so lucky for me personally, I know how to do a lot of car stuff. You've seen my channel, I have a lot of car videos, a lot of car tutorials on there. So I've changed the clutch on this car, I've changed the timing belt on this car, I've done numerous oil changes, numerous fluid changes like the tranny fluid, your brake fluid, all that type of stuff. So it's obviously going to be cheaper for me because I can do that stuff, but if you can't, that's going to cost you an arm and a leg, basically. So that's a big con, obviously, of ICE cars. Is engine is, there's much more maintenance involved. I've also changed all 4 motor mounts on this car. What else have I done? I haven't done the suspension yet. I could, but I don't really want to because it's not really needed. Brake pads and rotors are another one that you'd have to change at some point. So I haven't actually. I have done that with this car too. So a lot of maintenance, especially when you're stopping. Can't regen brake and slow the car down, so it kind of sucks. I think for our family, we are really like Hondas. So the quality of Hondas are really good. Obviously, I've had this car 183,000 miles, and it's working great. Obviously, I take care of it as well, so that helps. But Hondas are very reliable, so that's always a good thing. The one thing that I always like kind of making fun of Japanese cars in general is, since they're Japanese, I call them kind of tin cans because the metal isn't very thick, right? And so basically I mean they're safe, but they're not going to be as safe as Tesla, because it's like American made, right? So it's real steel and nice and thick. And so anyway, that's one thing that's kind of a con about this car is it is a Japanese car, so it's reliable, but it might not be super safe. And one other thing I wanted to note is I'm going up a hill now, and if you can hear that would be the engine making all sorts of noise. So that's one con of having a ICE car is it's super loud, especially when you're going uphill and I'm driving a stick, so I got to try and keep it in a little bit of a lower gear, so that's kind of, it's more noise for you, so it's something you don't have to deal with in Tesla. And of course, another thing I just thought about is, sure, I'm going up the hill, but once I go down the hill, I'm going to have to ride my brakes rather than using regen to slow the car down and charge the battery. So that's kind of no good if you're driving an ICE car. One of the good pros about having a ICE car, at least for now anyway, is range. So this car gets pretty good gas mileage. Normally if I'm driving street, mixed street highway, I get about 35 miles a gallon. So when you combine that with how big the gas tank is, I can get about 380 miles a gallon on one fill up. If I was driving all street, I can easily break 400. So that's one thing that EVs haven't caught up to yet, but Elon's already been talking about 400 mile, I think, Model S's. So that'll get there. But for now, the ICE car, does have really good range, especially this car. So that's always nice. You don't have to fill up as often. So if you drive a lot, you get good range with this car, but in the end, the Tesla's going to end up saving you more money just because there's not as much maintenance involved. The more miles you drive, that means you got to change your oil, you got to change your fluids, you have to change your timing belt at some point. Your clutch might die, which happened in this car. So things like that you don't really have to worry about if you drive more. So that's where the Tesla kind of really wins, is if you drive a lot. Performance of this car is obviously non-existent because it's not a performance car. The suspension is just floaty and I guess normal people, right? So when you take turns, this car just goes back and forth. There's no balance at all. So obviously a Tesla wins in that category, hands down. So overall, this is kind of like first world problems, right? So basically this car will get you from point A to point B, but if you're looking for an experience, the Model 3 is way better in that category than this car, hands down. So that's the test drive for this car. So let's go hop into the Model 3 and we're going to drive the same route, and I can give you the comparison between this car and the Model 3. Okay guys, I'm sure this looks way more familiar to you now. So this is the Model 3, obviously. So when you first get in, you're obviously going to notice the minimal design. Just a screen on the on the interior. All the important stuff's on the left, and then you've got all your controls on the right here. The steering wheel, of course, is minimalistic, just the two scroll wheels, and your horn, of course. No zillion buttons on the screen, so that's always good. And then, of course, you've got the vegan seats, leather seats, which are super nice. Leather is obviously a luxury type thing compared to cloth, so that's always a nice bonus to have in the Model 3. No CD players or auxiliary ports in this car. It's all Bluetooth, which is really cool too. Obviously, it's a tech car, so we're going to go, obviously looking forward to the future with streaming music and things like that, so you don't need any cords or anything like that. All electronic, so that's always cool. And the trunk space on this car it's a good size, but I just don't really like the shape. Like I mentioned earlier, my hand truck, I can't fit it in this car without putting one of the seats down, which is kind of annoying, because then it just rolls all over the place when I'm driving, and I hate that. Alright, so let's take this car for a test drive. So, got my foot on the brake, push the stock down, car's ready to go. No noise, no engine startup. You wouldn't even know the car was on, basically, because it's an EV. So, here we go, take it out. So, as mentioned in my Civic, the steering is kind of crap, which, not gonna lie, it's kind of crap. So this car is a lot better. I have it on just regular comfort, I think is what it's called, mode. It's just a normal mode right now, and the steering is so much better. It's a lot tighter. You get way better feel, way better feedback than with the Civic. And of course, you want to make it even a little bit tighter and give you more feedback if you put it in sport mode. So if you're doing some sort of autocross or track racing or something, you definitely want to put it in that mode so you can feel the wheels a little bit better as you're turning. And so, haven't even really had to use the brakes yet, obviously because I have regen braking, so always awesome to recharge the battery and not burn out your brakes. So that's, obviously one of the costs that you're not going to have is basically, I think my brakes are probably going to last like the lifetime of this car, to tell you the truth, because I do not use my brakes very much at all unless it's like an emergency situation. So as I mentioned earlier, EV, energy, cheap. So, for me personally, I don't have to pay for energy because I have it at work. So that's really awesome. And I'm getting it like even cheaper, but even if you don't get it free, you just, go to your utility company. They probably have a time of rate usage plan, and energy would be super cheap. And I'm talking about, living here in the Bay Area too. It's cheap, but like if you live somewhere like maybe Oregon or Washington or maybe Texas, you're going to get it like literally dirt cheap. So that's always awesome to have that little cost. As I mentioned earlier, also maintenance. Literally, I think the only maintenance for this car is going to be your brake fluid in like 2 years, because that, over time is going to absorb moisture, and so that's going to make the brake fluid less effective. And then, of course, the batteries need to be cooled, so there's battery coolant. That's every 4 years. So I think that's really it. Cabin filter, every like 30,000 miles, which is, for me, I can do that myself. And Tesla's actually even put a little tutorial online on how to do that. It's not hard. I think the only thing is you need like a Torx bit, screw bit. So it's a different style of screwdriver, I guess. It's not a Phillips or a flathead, it's a Torx. But you have that, easy install. So another thing I like about Teslas in general is the performance part. So suspension on this car is really nice. It's well balanced. I can definitely hit corners pretty hard. Like in my Civic, there's no way I'd be able to do that. I'd probably not roll the car, but there's no way the understeer would kill me, and I'd have to really slow down to be able to take a turn. And so basically this car it just goes, which is pretty awesome for a car that Elon has safety in mind first rather than performance. I mean, this car really performs pretty well. So on that note, safety, NHTSA gave this car, I think, 5 stars. It's one of the safest cars out there. So it's great to not have to worry about that type of thing. I mean, obviously you don't want to get in an accident, but if you do, you know you'll be safe. Whereas my Civic, tin metal, like I put it earlier. So there's a little bit more risk, and the car is also older, which means technology wasn't as good back then. So upgrading your car, also too with the technology piece is awesome, because they're going to have all the latest stuff, and you'll be safe, basically. Quality of this car is awesome. Elon has mentioned he wants these cars, or he thinks they can go like 500,000 to 1,000,000 miles. If I get 200,000 out of this car, I will be really happy. So just knowing that he's looking into that type of quality while he's making these cars is great. Basically, you buy the car once, and hopefully you can just drive it forever, which would be awesome. So we'll have to see how far this car gets me. Obviously I haven't had it a year yet, and so still working on that piece. But we'll have to see, how far these cars go once they start to get older and the fleet starts to get older. All right, so I'm entering that same hill that I drove on the Civic, and quiet, nothing. You hear anything? Nope. So obviously, because there's no engine, it's all energy. Electric motors are super quiet. It's just nothing. A little whine, and that's basically it. So it's one of those things that's really nice over, not having an engine or a motor. You don't have vibrations, you don't have a lot of noise. It's just peace and quiet. It's always nice. So of course, range is always one of the biggest talked about things when you're talking about EVs. And so I have the mid-range, which is 260 miles total, 235 when you charge it to 90%. So for me, that's fine, because my commute to work is 8 miles each way, so it's really nothing. And even if I drove, all the way across the bay, and I was driving 50 miles each way, 100 miles a day is no problem for even the standard range plus. 240 miles is 240, 260, it's pretty close. Charge it up every day in your garage overnight, you full battery, there's no issues. The only time this might be an issue is if you're, taking a road trip. Then you might have to charge more often than not. So that's the only time my particular mid-range might be kind of an issue, where you'd want to get the long range instead. So you can keep going and not have to charge up as many times, because the charging piece right now does take a while, even with the superchargers, which are quick, but the technology isn't quite there yet where we can charge as fast as you can gas up your car. So it's one of the sticky points, but basically I'm considered, anyone who has a Tesla right now is considered an early adopter. So just one of those things that as technology gets better, we'll have to worry about that. So reliability on this car it's been great so far. I haven't had any issues with it, and so hopefully that stays that way. It is technology, basically a computer on wheels, and so hopefully my computer doesn't die or break or anything like that. So yeah, like I said, I haven't had any issues with it, and so reliability has been great. Hopefully it stays that way, so that'll keep your costs down, your overhead costs for driving the car. So overall, I really like this car, obviously, because I have it. Quality is great. The reliability has been great. And so, I haven't had any issues with it. I like driving this car around. It's freaking awesome. Definitely gives you a way better experience than, say, a Civic or your normal ICE car. I would buy another Tesla if we had money to, and my wife wanted to drive one, because we'd be saving more money in the future. So hopefully that comparison was helpful for you guys. If you have a Model 3, what feature do you like the most compared to your old car? And if you're watching this video because you're looking to buy a Model 3, which feature interests you the most in an EV compared to your ICE car? So let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And thanks for watching.